Good, good morning. I know it's December 6th. This is my Sunday school class, and we are going through the book of Genesis. We've just gotten to Sodom and Gomorrah. We're in Genesis chapter 19, and it's so interesting. I'm I'm actually running a little late because I found an argument on the Bible, uh, on the internet about the Bible, especially about Sodom and Gomorrah and what the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah was. And it was fascinating. I was just reading this morning, just reading, and wow. So I felt I have to go into more detail about the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah. Because if you say, well, here's what the Bible says the sin is, then people go crazy because how about we've been taught? No. But so anyway, we're going to go into it. Um, Genesis chapter 19. Three angels in Genesis chapter 18. Three angels had shown up um, to Abraham's house, to his tent, and they didn't look like angels. And by angels, we just mean messengers of God. They don't have wings and all that stuff. They're just messengers of God. And one of them, the God spoke out of. Like I was giving the example last week about like my phone. If I called my sister-in-law, I don't know, I keep just picking on Mary, but she'd be speaking out of the phone. That's definitely her, but this is not her. This is a phone, but that's definitely her voice speaking out of it. And so that wasn't God, that third angel. That was definitely God speaking through him, giving the message to Abraham that they were going to go destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, saying it in a way like a parent might say, well, I'm on my way upstairs to check out your bedroom. The parent are, see if you cleaned up. The parent already knows you didn't clean up. They already know, but they're giving you a chance to straighten up a little bit before they can walk up the stairs. And that's kind of what was going on with the angels. Let me tell Abraham what we're about to do, because they're trying to teach him intercession. That we're never to think it's too late. We are never to think, oh no, look what's going on over there. It's too late to pray. It's never too late to pray. So he is, yes, yes, thank you. So he is saying it in a way so that Abraham will think, oh, maybe I can save somebody, maybe we can pray for somebody, maybe we can pull, and maybe God doesn't have to destroy, because we don't know the mind of God and what He's about to do or not. You know, so when we see something wrong, we're supposed to think, oh, let me pray for that situation, not, well, they're doomed, right? So that's what He's trying to teach Abraham. So that's why He says it in a way. We're going to go down and check it out and see if it's really as bad as we thought. And then Abraham can say, no, don't destroy it. What if there's 10 righteous? Because that's what we're saying. Lord, have mercy. Don't destroy that situation. Don't have mercy. I know that we deserve, but he wants us to be that sort of people who are not glorying in the destruction of others like Jonah did. Like, ooh, I hope you destroy Nineveh because they're nasty. But he wants us to be people who intercede for others and always believe that there's hope, right? So Abraham intercedes, and if there's 10 right, but God knows how many righteous are there. And he didn't say, let me go and tell Abraham what I'm hoping to do. He says, let me tell him what I'm about to do. But he says everything to Abraham in a way so that Abraham's mind can work, and he learns the lesson about intercession. Perfect. Now the angels go down. So we're in Genesis chapter 19, verse 1. Now the two angels, so the one stayed to talk with the one who's Jehovah was speaking through, stays to talk with Abraham, and the other two go down. Now the two angels come to Sodom in the evening, because it was about a day's walk from where Abraham lived down into Sodom. And Lot was sitting in the gates of Sodom. Why is he sitting in the gates? Because wouldn't that hurt to sit on a gate? The gates were the place in the city where um, the food was sold. It was where the market was. They did it right at the gates as people were coming into the city, um, because that's when you'd catch the most traffic of tourist people visiting and all that. Right, it would come there, and also in the gates of the cities where the judges sat. So it was the town square. So it served as the courthouse and the mall. That would be cool if there was a mall right next to the courthouse, so you can go pay your ticket and then get your dry cleaning done. So the judges would sit, and if anybody had a case, they would bring it there, and the elders of the city would act as judges. And this is in all the cities in the Middle East, right? And the elders would act as judges. For example, Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 18 through 21. Good morning, Denise and Rodney and Betty Cooley. Okay. And then it's in Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 18 through 21. It says, if a man has a stubborn and rebellious son, so Moses is laying down the law, how they're supposed to operate, right? So if a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and who, when they chasten him, will not heed them. So, first of all, they told him what to do, and he said no. And then they punish him, and he still won't listen. Then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his city, to the gates of the city, because that's where the elders would sit in it, right? Those were the judges. And the reason they were the elders, we don't respect the elders in our generation. We love the young. We think the young know more than the old, which is really odd. So we'll let the young people take over stuff. And it's good to have young blood. Great to have young blood, but they don't know more. They don't know more. So anyway, they would bring them to the elders because the elders are the ones who've been around for a while and kind of knew. To the gates of the city, it says, we're in Deuteronomy chapter 21. And verse 20 says, and they shall say to the elders of his city, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of the city shall stone him to death with stones. So you shall put away the evil from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. So in these cases, this person was made an example so that everybody else would hear about it and then fear and say, well, I don't want to do that. So it's like cops will sit in a quote unquote speed trap, give out a couple tickets, and then they don't have to worry about it. Now this word spreads, oh, you got to slow down when you go over there because those cops will get you. Cops don't have to come back for a year, but they've given out tickets. Anyway, so they're going to take this one child and stone him to death, and all children from then on will listen. But this happens in the gates of the city. That's where the judges and where the elders sit. So Lot, who hadn't been, well, he'd been there a while, but he wasn't born there. He would sit himself at the gates of the city. So when the two angels came down, they see Lot, he's sitting in the gates, right, with the judges. Genesis chapter 19, the second part of verse 1 says, and when Lot saw them, he rose to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground, which is how you're supposed to treat strangers. And he said, here now, my lords, please turn into your servant's house and spend the night, and wash your feet, and then you may rise early and go on your way. Which is very interesting. We saw how Abraham treated his visitors and made a feast for them and killed the cow, and so they had beef, and then they had sweet and sour milk, which like a big deal in those days, and bread, and okay, so and please stay as long as you want. But Lot says, let me come into my house, and then early in the morning you need to get out of here. So they said to him, no, but we will spend the night in the open square. So no, thank you. Now, again, the angels know why they're there, and there's a lesson to be learned from all of this, because they are treating Lot the way God treats us. And here's the deal: they want to see what he's going to say, and sometimes, so they're letting the situation linger to see if Lot's going to say, okay, fine, I tried. Are we going to say no and be persistent? Be persistent. That's a thing. But so no, we're going to spend the night in the open square. Now, This story happened again later in the Bible in Judges, and there are visitors who visit a city. In this case, they were not angels, but nobody knew these guys were angels. A lot didn't know these were angels. And in the book of Judges, in chapter 19, a man and his wife come to stay in the city. They're on their way somewhere, but it's too late to travel. So they said, we're going to stop in the city of Benjamin here. Gibeah is the name of the city, but it's one of the cities that the tribe of Benjamin owned. And he decided they were going to sleep in the open square. And then this guy sees them and says, no, not in the open square. In Judges chapter 19, verse 17, it says, and when he raised his eyes, he saw the traveler in the open square of the city. And the old man said, where are you going and where do you come from? So he said, we are passing from Bethlehem in Judah toward the remote mountains of Ephraim. So they're going from the south to the north, right? And I am from there. I went to Bethlehem in Judah, and now I'm going to the house of the Lord. But there is no one who will take me into his house. So they were in this city, knocking on doors, and everyone was very cruel to them in the city, which is, again, important because this was the sin of Sodom. Cruelty to foreigners, turning your back on the poor and the needy. There's no one who will take me into his house. So I'm going to stay in the open square is what he's basically saying. Verse 20 of Judges 19, and the old man said, peace be with you. However, let all your needs be my responsibility. Only do not spend the night in the open square. This is bad. Okay, so the angels are going to spend the night in the open square, but they're saying to him, hey, we want to spend the night in the open square, so no thank you, to see what Lot will do. In Luke chapter 11, so persistence in prayer is a real thing. Luke chapter 11, Jesus is talking about persistence and not giving up when you know the right thing. Somehow that's a quality, that's an important piece of it. In Luke chapter 11, verse 4 through 9, but deliver us from the evil one. Jesus had just teaching him to pray. The disciple says, when we pray, how do we pray? He says, you pray that you want your God's will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. And that's basically all you're asking for. Then you ask for forgiveness for my sins and help me to forgive other people. And he says, but deliver us from evil. It's okay to pray, Lord, because they were in the midst of horrible oppression. So you want deliverance from evil. Now, then the very next thing, he doesn't want them to give up on that, because some of us give up when things look really bad, like we're in the middle of a pandemic or something, and people are tempted to just, oh, this will never end, and it will never. And that we need to know that God is going to make everything all right. We give up because we think it's over. It's never going to. This will never end. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. This too shall pass. And whatever situations we're in, poverty, whatever it is, it's dire, but we're not supposed to think that God has forgotten us, that God is not going to come through. He is going to come through. There's something about not giving up hope. That's a component of prayer. So right after Jesus is telling them, and pray this way, deliver us from the evil one, or deliver us from evil, the evil of this present age. In verse 5 in Luke chapter 11, it says, and he said to them, which of you shall have a friend? You go to him at midnight. You say to him, friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread. Now it's midnight. And for them, that was the middle of the night, because their night started at 6 p.m. So this is like going to somebody at 3 in the morning, I need 3 loaves of bread, for a friend of mine has come to me on his journey. So, which is how you're supposed to do when people show up. When foreigners come to you, you're supposed to give them food and comfort, and that's what God expects. Okay. A friend of mine has come on his journey, and I have nothing to set before him. So in the Middle Eastern tradition, when people come to visit, you set out food. You're supposed to, okay. Southern tradition, right.
Your family ride from Texas.
Right. When people show up, you
could.
So, and he will answer from within and say, so here's what the friend says. Do not trouble me. I don't know why he said it with a French accent. Do not trouble me. The door is now shut, and my children are with me in bed. I cannot rise and give to you. So he says, which of them? No, I mean, if I said, do not give it to me. I did it. I don't know why I did that. So the door is now shut. He says, so which of your friend will say that? Like, is that what they say? He says, verse 8 says, I say to you, though he will not rise and give to him because he's his friend, yet because of his persistence, he will rise and give him as many as he needs. Because he's there asking and saying, hey, I need this help, because sometimes we give up before we even ask. So I say to you, ask, it will be given to you. Seek, you will find. Knock, it will be opened. And Jesus is encouraging them to ask, to knock, to seek. Don't give up. Don't think, oh, because we defeat ourselves before we ever ask. We already think God's going to say no. So he says, ask. And this was in connection to, you're in this evil surrounding you. You're in this horrible situation. Don't give up. Don't say, oh, well, I'm just going to have to give in. So there's a thing to persistence where he wants us not to lose hope, right? And that's a component. So sometimes God will on purpose delay, I'm telling you, to see if we'll just go, oh, well, never mind. Or if we'll go, no, Lord, I just believe this is going to happen. That's faith. And he wants us to really trust and believe that he's going to come through and not give up. So in fact, the parable of the unjust judge, a friend of mine, Jim, says, we were talking about the parable of the unjust judge. And because I had said, you can't change God's mind. And he was saying, is this an example of God changing God's mind? And so I'm reading the parable of the unjust judge, and it's not. The rival comes, the woman comes to the judge, and the judge is an unjust judge, and God's not comparing himself to an unjust judge. He's saying there's a Middle Eastern tradition of going from the worst to the best, giving the worst example, and says, if a dog will wash himself off, then certainly you should, they give the worst. If a snake knows better than to do so, they give the worst example that says, so certainly then you should. So he says, let me talk about an unjust judge. If an unjust judge acts this way, you know that God will come through. So God's not comparing himself to the unjust judge. But in this situation, the woman comes to the unjust judge demanding justice against her adversary. I want justice. I want justice. And the judge is not judging the merit of her case. He won't even listen. But because she's persistent, the judge finally says, okay, I'm going to grant this woman justice for her rival against her adversary. And he's saying, if an unjust judge will do it just because of your persistence, how much more so will God give you justice? So the judge's mind wasn't changed. He hadn't even listened. He wasn't even listening. And finally says, okay, I'll listen and give her what he wants. It's not like he was going to give her unjustness. That's not a word. Whatever the opposite of justice is, he wasn't going to give her the opposite, and she changed his mind. He was giving her nothing. He wasn't even listening. And so he says, so if an unjust judge is going to, because you're persistent, because you don't give up, how much more will God grant justice to those who are waiting for it? So because Jesus is preaching to a group of oppressed Jews who are oppressed by the Herodians who are over them, and oppressed by the Romans who are over them, and they're making them pay taxes and everything, and then they have to do that. And he says, don't worry, justice is coming. Now, and we know from the Wednesday night Bible study, Jesus was serious. Justice is coming. So the wicked, don't worry, the wicked will be judged. So he says, don't give up hope, because when you give up, you give in. And you say, well, I might as well join them. And that's the whole point. And he's telling Lot, are you going to join these wicked people who are refusing to, don't give up. Don't give up. Be persistent. Know that God sees everything. So there's no reason for you to say, oh, well, I might as well. All right. Wow, that was a long time. So also Luke chapter 24, verse 28 says, then they drew near to the village where they were going. And, so remember after after Jesus had gone to the cross, died, put him in the tomb, the women showed up. They see that the tomb is empty. They go back and tell the disciples. Then they run after the women have already gone ahead of them. Then they run there. and they, oh, there's no so they're walking back, and then this guy joins them. Now it's Jesus, but he's not saying anything because he wants to see, what are you gonna say? He just wants to hear, like, how are you gonna process this information? So know that Jesus will just insert himself into your group just to hear, what are you saying when you think I'm not listening? And so they're walking together and he's talking. And in Luke 24:28, it says, then they drew near to the village where they were going, and Jesus, but they don't know it's Jesus, indicated that he would have gone further. Like, okay, you guys stop here. I'm going to go on down to San Diego. I'm going to keep walking. But they constrained him. Now, he did that on purpose to see, because he's the foreigner, he's the stranger in the land. And they want to see, are you going to do what you're supposed to do, even though you're depressed, even though you're thinking, and invite me in? Says, but they constrained him, saying, no, abide with us, for it is toward the evening, and the day is far spent. So he went in to stay with them. Now, this is Jesus with his disciples, but he wants to see, what are you going to do? Are you going to say, oh, well, yeah, you need it. Yeah, go on. Are we going to be selfish and let this man at night walk down to San Diego? Or are you going to say, no, you got to stay with me? So Jesus wanted to see where they were, what lessons they had learned. And that's what the angels were doing with Lot. They're saying, no, we're going to go stay in the public square. And like, no. Now they knew they were there to save Lot, and they knew what was going to happen, but it was for Lot. And please know that God does, he's there. He wants to see, what are you going to do when you see that person in that situation? Are you just going to walk by, or are you going to actually, do something if he's moving on your heart to do it? So Lot passed. He insisted strongly. He said, no, you've got to come into the house, because he knew what was going to happen, and he didn't just say, well, I tried. So 2 Peter chapter 2, verses 7-8 mentions Lot. He says, and God delivered righteous Lot. So if Lot had not done this and said, no, you angels have to come with me, then the angels had the right then to just destroy the whole place, Lot included. But Lot invited the angels in, not knowing they were angels, and got the blessing, right? So he says, and he delivered righteous Lot, who was oppressed by the filthy conduct of the wicked. For that righteous man, dwelling among them, it tormented his righteous soul from day to day by seeing and hearing their lawless deeds. So Lot did this because he could see this town is crazy, although he did not leave. But so he was oppressed constantly day and night, like, ugh. So he knew, I better not let these people stay out here. He knew how these people were. And so that's part of why he was delivered, according to Peter, because he could see the wickedness, and he brought the angels into his house. So Genesis chapter 19, here we go. So they turned to him and entered his house, starting with the second part of verse 2. Then he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Now I have an opinion about that, because it doesn't say he cut the calf and did everything else. He just made them some bread real quick, but that's okay. So now verse 4. Now before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, and all the people from every quarter surrounded the house. Now they wanted to make sure that it's old and young, and it's people from every quarter. So this was a representative. It wasn't literally every single man from Sodom. It wasn't 100,000 people standing outside the house, but it was everybody. And they want to make sure that everybody, no matter where you lived, all had the same attitude. And they surrounded the house, and they called to Lot and said to him, where are the men who came to you by night? Bring them out to us, that we may know them. The Genesis puts in the carnally, which is not there, but make sure we don't want to just know their name and address. We want to know them. And so I had spoken last week about the sin of Sodom, and this is not Ezekiel says, here's what the real sin was. And because God's looking in the heart, here's the root of why God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. This is not how it's taught in the Christian churches, because we have fixated on the homosexuality and made a big deal of that. But that's not why God was judging them. And homosexuality is a sin, but that's not what God was judging. It was, my wife's saying it was their apostasy. But so in Jewish tradition, this is uh, in Jewish tradition, this is taught that the sin of Sodom is their inhospitality to these foreigners. What's exactly what Ezekiel says? Ezekiel says in chapter 16, verse 49 through 50, says, "Look, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom. She and her daughter, which the city next to her, Gomorrah, had pride, fullness of food, and abundance of idleness. They were prideful. They were too full. They were lazy because it's a rich city. Neither did she strengthen the hand of the poor and the needy. So as rich as they were, they didn't help the poor and the needy. Now, when they excavated Sodom and Gomorrah, which is where the Dead Sea is now, and they dug it up, they know that Sodom and Gomorrah had two minerals there that made them very wealthy city. Tar, there's a lot of tar. Interesting enough, the tar was in the sand because of all the oil, which at the time they didn't need all that oil. They didn't know what do we do with all this black gold, Texas tea. What do they do with all this? But it created this tar substance which they used to build houses. It was very valuable. Tar was not everywhere. I was just in certain places, and you would because you would use it like stucco, and also the Egyptians used it in their mummification. So they had a very rich mineral that grew there, and also copper grew there. And this was the Bronze Age where the people made their weapons and stuff. So people came to this region a lot, and it was a very wealthy city, and yet they were so oppressive to the poor, so oppressive to foreigners. Hated them some foreigners. It says, and they were haughty and committed abomination before me. Therefore, I took them away as I saw fit. So Ezekiel saying this was the sin of Sodom, how evil they were, even though as rich as they were, to the poor and to the needy. Um, in Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 14, in Jeremiah 23:14, it says, also I've seen a horrible thing in the prophets of Jerusalem. They commit adultery and walk in lies. Now, he's talking about when they're talking about adultery, they mean worshiping these other idols, right? You were married to God, but now you keep worshiping these other idols. So they commit adultery, they walk in lies. They also strengthen the hands of evildoers. So people who are against God, they actually encourage them so that no one turns back from his wickedness. So people know to do right, but they are refusing to do right. All of them are like Sodom to me, and their inhabitants are like Gomorrah. So again, the point is their wickedness. It's interesting that you won't find the homosexuality mentioned anywhere. And again, I'm not saying because online you're trying to say that homosexuality is not a sin. No, that's not against me. I saw an argument going on because if you look up Jewish teaching on the sin of Sodom, it's all about how they treated foreigners, how they were evil to the needy and the poor. That's what the rabbinic tradition is. They have stories about Sodom and Gomorrah that were passed down generation to generation, where foreigners would come to their city and they would refuse to give them anything until they starved to death because they hated visitors. They hated immigrants coming in because they were afraid you're going to take what's ours. So they treated them horribly, and they would give them coins that they would write their names on, and then when the foreigners starved to death, then they would come and claim the bodies, and they would get their coins and show everybody, look, see, I was one of the people that knew right from the beginning he was going to die. And in fact, there's a story about some woman who actually snuck out and helped a foreigner who was starving to death because nobody would take him into their house. And and when he didn't die soon enough, people like found her and killed her because you're helping this person because they wanted to scare off any foreigners. You do not come to this is ours, and they're afraid that people are going to take it. So so it was very so that's the sin of these are this rabbinic stories that are passed down generation to generation. That's what they believe the sin of Sodom, and these Jewish people were there. That's where they're from. So, but at the Christian church, we want to emphasize something different because that makes us excited. So in Matthew, so it's again, it's how they're treating the foreigner. When Jesus talked about Sodom, that's what he said. In Matthew chapter 10, verse 14 through 15, you're going to hear this verse a different way than we've heard it before. Matthew 10, 14 and 15, it says, Whoever will not receive you nor hear your words when you depart from that house or city, shake off the dust from your feet. So you're going to go from city to city. You're a foreigner. If they won't receive you, if they won't let you in, if they treat you badly, how, then just shake off the dust of your feet for that city. Because assuredly I say to you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. So he's comparing how Sodom and Gomorrah treated the foreigners who showed up, and saying they didn't know that it's not like they were rejecting Jesus. They were rejecting foreigners, and they were really horrible to them. But in the day of judgment, Sodom and Gomorrah will be able to point and say, but you turned your back on the gospel. You turned your back on Jesus. And it's going to be worse for that city, those cities that don't receive you. And Jesus is talking about how they received strangers. And that's the sin of Sodom. He's saying, see how badly it's going to be, but it's going to be worse for those cities than it was for Sodom because of how they treated strangers, how they treated foreigners. Now, this, again, it happened before, not before, it happened again later. Let's go back to that Judges 19 story when there were travelers coming, and it's a man and not his wife, his mistress were traveling, and they stopped at the city of Benjamin. And remember, the gentleman came out and found them in the square, like, no, don't stay in the square. So he invites them to his house. In Judges chapter 19, verse 22, it says, as they were enjoying themselves, suddenly certain men of the city, perverted men, surrounded the house, beat on the door, and they spoke to the master of the house of the old man, saying, bring out the man who came to your house, that we may know him. Carnally, again, that's what the Genesis adds. So this was a thing, apparently, when a foreigner came to your door, the men would, if the city was wicked, would show up. Now, here's what they want to do. They want to, they're going to rape this person as a warning to any foreigners who are going to come. This is what will happen to you, because they want to scare off people. They want the word to spread, so it's a way of, we don't want immigrants, we don't want foreigners, and so we're going to do the worst thing we can imaginable to them. So they said, bring out the man. So, right, verse 20 says, so the guy said, no, don't take, and this is what's abominable to me, this is the worst part of the story to me, no, don't bother this man and his mistress. I have a virgin daughter, please take her instead. Yeah, because yes. So he's thinking, my duty is protect these visitors to my house, not to protect my own family. But anyway, it says, but the men would not heed him. Like, we don't want your daughter because she's from here. The point is not the sex. The point is to scare this foreigner away. So the man took his concubine and brought her out to them. Okay, so they said, okay. And they knew her and abused her all night until morning. And when the day began to break, then they finally let her go. So the point was to embarrass either the man or his mistress because they were foreigners. So, okay, we'll rape her all night. So the point was to embarrass them and to hurt them and to kill them, because they ended up killing her. When the guy comes out of the house in the morning, he sees his mistress there and she's dead. You know the story. And then he cut her into 12 different pieces and he mailed them to the 12 tribes of Israel and says, look what they've done to my mistress that I'd left out, locked her out of the house and let them rape her. Look what they did, those horrible people. And so, and maybe some of you haven't heard the story where they cut the woman into 12 pieces and mailed her all over but they just it was a warning to him. In fact, in the very next chapter, Judges chapter 20, verse 5, it says, the men of Gibeah, that was the Benjamin city, where they rose against me. He's telling his story because they're going, why did you just send me somebody's leg in the mail, right? So he's telling the story. The men of Gibeah rose against me and surrounded the house at night because of me. They intended to kill me, but instead they ravaged my concubine so that she died. So they wanted to kill, and these men wanted to kill those angels. Now they don't know they're angels, but the purpose is murder. The purpose is not sex. The purpose is murder. because you're a foreigner, and we hate foreigners. Okay, so back to Genesis chapter 19. Genesis chapter 19, verse 6 through 9. So Lot went out to them through the doorway. He shut the door behind him and said, "Please, my brethren, do not do so wickedly. See, now I have two daughters who have not known a man. Please let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you wish. Only do nothing to these men, since this is the reason they have come under the shadow of my roof. I promise I'd protect them, have my daughters." Now, they live there. So that wasn't, these men like, no, they live here. That's not interesting. It's like when the other man offered his daughter. No, she lives here. But okay, the woman, they took the other woman because she didn't live there. She's a foreigner, and that was their whole point. You don't live here, so we get to do what we want. When he says, "Take my daughters," it's like, no, that's not the point. The point is not to kill your daughters. You live here. Well, that's going to send the wrong message. The message we want to send is, any foreigner, just know if you show up here, we might kill you. So they said to him, "Stand back." So they're saying no. Now, here's the deal. They've been given a reprieve. Like, here, don't do that, do this. And they're like bold about what they want to do. In Isaiah 3:9, when the prophet is prophesying against the Jews who are just being wicked right in front of God's face, right? It says, the look on their countenance witnesses against them. You can see on their face how evil they are. And they declare their sin as Sodom. Like they're like bold with it. They do not hide it. Woe to their soul, for they have brought evil upon themselves. So he's talking about the Jews who in Jerusalem who were being wicked, but he's comparing them to Sodom and how bold they are. They're not even hiding it. They're like, "Hey, come on out." We don't. That's a great disdain for God when you're that bold. So when Lot goes out and says, "Hey, don't take them. Don't take this man who just showed up. These two men. Take my daughters." No. So they said in second part of verse 9, they said, "This one came in to stay." So now they're talking about Lot. "This one came in to stay here, and he keeps acting as a judge." Now don't forget, Lot would go down to the city and start judging people and with the elders. And he lived there for maybe 15, 20 years, but still, it's like, this guy came here, he keeps judging us. He puts himself and he's acting as a judge and telling us right and wrong. So they're mad at Lot anyway. So now we will deal worse with you than with him. So we're mad, you're not really from here, really, yourself. So we'll make it worse for you because you are judging and telling us that we should not sin. So they pressed hard against the man Lot, like they're about to grab him, and came near to break down the door. But the men reached out their hands, so the two angels, and pulled Lot into the house with them, and they shut the door. Then it says they struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness, both small and great, so they became weary trying to find the door. Now this is what's fantastic. So this light goes off, and the light blinds them. We know that it was a temporary blindness. It's not a permanent blindness, but they're still blind, like when a flash goes off. If there had been a permanent blindness, they might have gone to the hospital, or not the hospital, they have hospitals, but because it was a temporary blindness, they knew it was going to pass, so they kept trying to find the door. Wow, an angel just blinded me, but I'm not gonna let that stop me. So, which is incredible, right? What is that about? So I can't see, so when God blinds you temporarily, and you still gonna keep going, that is some bold. Whew, that's amazing. Now, there's another story of temporary blindness. Again, we know it was temporary blindness. It's because it's similar to what happened with Elijah in 2 Kings chapter 6. Elijah is being chased by, I forget which king. The king of Syria wants to destroy Elijah because they go to him and say, "Elijah knows your secrets," and what he's telling people because he's a prophet and God would tell him stuff. So I'm going to kill Elijah. I'm going to kill his servant. So that he sends a whole army after Elijah and his servant. And in 2 Kings chapter 6, these armies are on their way, and the servant is scared to death. "Oh no, they're coming, right?" It says, and Elijah prayed and said, Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. This is 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 17. Open his eyes that he may see. Then the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. So we get scared, but angels are always around us. God never doesn't leave us, and fortunately, God opened that man's eyes so you can see. I got a mountain full of angels here. That army coming after you, they can't hurt you. Stop panicking. Because Elijah wasn't panicked. So verse 18. So when the Syrians came down to him, Elijah prayed to the Lord and said, strike this people, I pray, with blindness. Now he means temporary blindness. And he struck them with blindness according to the word of Elijah. So like there's a blinding light, like when you get a flashbulb. Oh, young people don't even know what flashbulbs are, but we know what flashbulb, and those, especially that square, we used to stick on that square, click, and it would click, click, and you couldn't see anything. Right. See? So it's like that kind of blindness that is going to leave, but for the time being, it's there. Had it been a real blindness, they would have stopped, but because it was only temporary blindness, here's what Elijah says to them. Verse 19, now Elijah says to them, that's not the way, nor is this the city. Follow me, and I'll bring you to the man whom you seek. And they go, oh, good. So this man's so nice, he's going to help us. Because we're not going to let this blindness stop us. So Elijah's, come on, I know who you're looking for. Come with me, and I'll lead you to this right city. And so he led them to Samaria, which is totally the wrong city. In verse 20, so it was when they had come to Samaria that Elisha says, now, Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and they were inside of Samaria. They were in trouble. Okay, so it's funny. Maybe I want to believe that I would have said, okay, I'm blind now. I need to just quit. But, well, I can't let that worry me now. Basically, okay. So Hebrews chapter 13, verse 2. This should have been their signal. The men of thought. I mean, this. Wow. Did that man raise his hand and now I'm blind? That should have been a clue, right? So Hebrews 13 says, do not forget to entertain strangers, for by so doing, some have unwittingly entertained angels. So people, for good or for bad, some people, I'm going to get out my car and go over to that man and tell him, that could be an angel in that car that can strike you blind or something. So for good or for bad, you can get the benefit if it's an angel and you don't know that it's really a messenger of God, but you go ahead and you're nice to that person and they bless you and surprise you. Or you could be really evil to somebody and it turns out it was an angel of God and then they curse you, So you have to be careful how we deal with people. So they did not stop. Now, here is the people who say, so this was the debate that was going on online. No, the sin of Sodom, you're trying to say that it was not homosexuality, and that was, but here's how the Bible always talks about Sodom. In Jude, and this was the scripture this one guy was using, in Jude, it only has one chapter, verse 5, he's talking about angels. And then he stops for a second, he's talking about Sodom and Gomorrah, but he's still talking about angels because we all know that they were angels. So in verse 5, it says, I want to remind you, though you once knew this, that the Lord, having saved the people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroy those who did not believe. So he says, even though God led them out of Egypt, once they got to Mount Sinai, there were people who just said, no, I think I'm going to go back to Egypt. Even though they could see God on the mountain, it's thunder and lightning, they heard his voice, that's some boldness to, I'm going to sin right in front of God. At least you can go into a soundproof room, but no, God is right there. I'm going to make this idol. We're going to go back. And then when they were given the opportunity to repent. Who's on the Lord's side? Is it not us? Okay. Then the earth opened up and swallowed them. So he's talking about rebellion in the face of God. He's just not talking about Eve type of sin. He's talking about Adam kind of sin. Right? Remember, Adam saw Eve die spiritually and said, I'm choosing Eve over God. Eve, it was the seed. She's thinking, oh, here's something that God wanted me to have, but he was hiding it from me. But Adam knew, he saw it and was choosing. The devil didn't come and deceive him. he saw, and it's that kind of in the face of what God is like right in front of me, and I'm still choosing to do this. That sort of rebellion you can't recover from. So in Jude, he's saying that apostasy, right? Verse 6, and the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but left their own abode. So the angels are in heaven looking at the face of God, and still they followed the devil in his rebellion. That's apostasy. You're rejecting, no, you're rejecting God. You're not just, oh, I'm hungry, I'm having an extra donut. And that's a sin. You shouldn't have that extra donut. But that's not a rejection of God. An extra donut is not a rejection of God. You know, there's sin that we're doing because we're stupid, but it's not a rejection of God. The sin that God's always worried about is the one where we're rejecting him. That's the sin we're going to go to hell for. So these angels left their own abode, and so he has reserved them in everlasting change under darkness for the judgment of the great day. Then he talks about Sodom and Gomorrah, as Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them in a similar manner to these. So they're rejecting God is the sin he's talking about, having given themselves over to sexual immorality and gone after strange flesh. Now, here's interesting. That word strange flesh is heteros flesh. Heteros flesh means flesh different than yours. So heterosexuality is attracted to the different than you. Homosexuality is attracted to the same as you. They use heteros because they know now that these are angels, and they're now wanting to straight to different heteros, different than theirs. He would have used a different word if it was attraction to the same flesh. At this point, they know that it's angels, and they're going after different flesh. Like, ooh, these are angels. They struck me blind, and I still want to. Now I want it even more. And they are trying to find these angels. It's like, and they know they're angels of God now. And they're saying, we're going to destroy, we're still going to rape them because they're from God. Oh, you're an angel from God? God can't do nothing. What can God do to me? So, so they go after these angels knowing that they're angels. And that's what the Jude is talking about. So they're set forth an example of sufferance and suffering the vengeance of eternal fire, right? That's what God can do to them, but they're not thinking that. Likewise, also these dreamers defile the flesh. I'm still in Jude. They reject authority, speak evil. The King James says of dignitaries, but of glories, of high people. They speak evil. They reject authority. They speak evil of the glories, is what. And so it's that. When you know it's God and you're speaking evil about it, that takes some boldness. That's when judgment comes upon you. Even Michael, verse 9, yet Michael, the archangel, in contending with the devil when he disputed about the body of Moses. So Michael came down to get Moses. We don't know if the body was dead or alive. Some people think that Moses hadn't died. He just went on up to heaven. And some people think maybe he died. No one ever saw Moses die in the wilderness, so we don't know. But Michael either comes to get the body of Moses, and the devil wants Moses too, the body. It says, even Michael, the archangel, when contending with the devil, when he disputed about the body of Moses, dared not bring against him a reviling accusation. He didn't even challenge, because he respected the devil's position and didn't come against the devil. He said, the Lord rebuke you. God is mad at you. I don't have the authority to come against you. God is the one that has authority over you, and the Lord rebuke you. So he says, Michael had respect for the devil. And we have to, so the point of Jude is how that people get this attitude where they just don't care about people in authority. You don't care about God. You don't care about these sort of things, that even if angels come and blind you, I'm still going to rape that angel. What? And that's what Jude is about. We have to be careful that we don't have that same attitude. We have to fear God and respect him. So he says, but these speak evil of whatever they do not know. And whatever they know naturally, like brute beasts, in these things they corrupt themselves. So the things that they don't know about, they speak evil of it. And even the things that they naturally know, they go against their own natural instincts. Woe to them, for they have gone in the way of Cain. Now remember, Cain's killing Abel, his brother, on purpose. And when God comes to Cain, what happened to Abel? Am I my brother's keeper? It's like getting smart with God. Like God didn't know what happened. Like God's like, oh, well, I'm sorry. Didn't mean to bother you. But that's like when God is talking to you and you smart off, that's so they go away of Cain and have run greedily in the era of Balaam. Balaam knew better. He's trying to get Balak to curse God's people. And even when all these signs are showing up for Balaam, he's still trying to go against God. And for profit and perish in the rebellion of Korah. And Korah is leading the people against Moses. So he said, these are rebellions against God. It's that kind of attitude. It's not normal sin. It's not garden day variety. The type of rebellion is when the angel has struck you blind and you're still going to try to go because you're going against God. So the men said to Lot, verse 12, the men said to Lot, have you anyone else here? So again, he grabbed Lot and brought him inside. The angels grabbed Lot, brought him inside, and the men are still trying to find the door. I'm gonna get in there. I can't even see, but I know what I want. So the men said to Lot, have you anyone else here? Son-in-law, your sons, your daughters, whoever you have in the city, take them out of this place. Because these people, they've just not passed the test. You passed the test because when I said I'm gonna stay in the town square, you said, no, that's dangerous. They did not pass the test because when they were blinded, they did not repent. So done. That's all God needed. Then their iniquity is now full. Take them out of this place, for we will destroy this place because the outcry against them has grown great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law, yeah, who had married his daughters, and said, get up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy the city. But to his sons-in-law, he was seen to be joking. God's not going to destroy this city. That's how we are. Look how great this city is. Look what we've built. This is phenomenal. God is not going to destroy this city. But when the morning dawned, the angels urged Lot to hurry, saying, arise, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city. So I'm going to stop there. So the son-in-law would not listen to Lot, but he says, okay, fine. Take your wife and your 2 daughters and go, because it's on like Donkey Kong. So we will continue from there because Lot has had an interesting reaction. His wife had an interesting reaction, and then what happened? We'll go to the end of the chapter. Because even from there, even the middle of all that, God still is looking at how we're responding. When he warns us, how do we respond? So thank you so much for tuning in again and listening. It's amazing, those 12 of you who are left. I'm making that up. I'm always amazed that you take the time on Sunday mornings to listen to Lessing. If you're with Good Shepherd, please stay after and listen to Pastor Grimm's sermon. It's so good on the Good Shepherd Facebook page or on his Facebook page. And I'll see everyone else Wednesday at 7 o'clock for the Bible study. We're talking about the destruction of Jerusalem, and we're in Matthew chapter 24. Thanks.